What everyone needs to do today, if they care about the genocide, is to say the unsayable. That's all that needs to be done to protest. I mean, they're kind of making it easy for us to discredit them by just arresting people for unfurling protest signs. And at the same time, the hypocrisy. I mean, whether it's David Dreiman signing bombs, signing tank shells for the Israeli soldiers, and then being invited to a major music festival, while Bob Vylan and Dropkick are banned from festivals, banned from the United States. There's also this from British Foreign Minister David Lammy, which I think crystallizes the hypocrisy in a different way. Because remember, this is about terrorism. This is about how terrorism law is applied, and what terrorism means, and what we were told it meant after 9/11, and why we were told that our military had to go into the Middle East and throw some country up against the wall and smash it up. It was terrorism. David Lammy is meeting with the former deputy head of ISIS, the founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria, Jabhat al-Nusra, Ahmad Al-Jawlani, whose real name is Ahmad Al-Sharaa. Today in Damascus, I met with President Al-Sharaa and Foreign Minister Assad Shabani. I welcomed progress made and stressed the need for an inclusive and representative political transition. The UK stands ready to support the new Syrian government while we classify our own citizens as terrorists for protesting genocide. I mean, it doesn't get any more hypocritical than that. And I think everyone can see it now. In the UK, of course, as you amply reported, Aaron, was the key sponsor of the dirty war on Syria.
And the reason why is because, I mean, it was the U.S. that was the main sponsor, but the U.S. wanted to keep a lot of stuff off the books. So they got their junior contractor, who was more than willing to come in and play the role of taking the reins on the Syria dirty war. So that's why so much of the deceptions, like the white helmets, were run out of the UK, simply because the UK was just jumping at the opportunity to show the Godfather, Washington, that it could be of service. And so it's really taken the Syria file to the extreme, to the point where they go and meet with Jawlani. But yeah, I really hope that image, just as the UK proscribes Palestine action and accuses them of terrorism, their foreign minister goes and meets with the former, as you said, deputy leader of ISIS, leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria, Jawlani. And that speaks to why the Syria dirty war was launched in the first place. It was to bleed and destabilize the forces in the region that stand up to Israel. And that's why Jawlani now says openly that Israel and Syria, under his rule, have common enemies. And those enemies, by the way, include Syrians who are still being massacred if they're from a different sect, because the wing that the UK and Israel and the US supported, that Jawlani represents, were Sunni extremists who hate minorities and have been persecuting them and killing them ever since taking power, which again gets totally overlooked as Jawlani gets a warm embrace from the UK and the US.
And the US, where the US has officially removed Jawlani, aka Ahmad Al-Sharaa, from its designation list of foreign terror organizations. They removed Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which was the rebranded Al-Qaeda, rebranded out of Jabhat al-Nusra, which went through various phases, Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, and now Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Whatever, it's all a sham. In consultation with the Attorney General and the Secretary of Treasury, I hereby revoke the designation of Al-Nusra Front, also known as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, as a foreign terrorist organization. Marco Rubio, signed June 23rd, 2025. They list any Palestinian organization that lifts a finger against Israel as a terrorist group, even if it has no ambition to attack outside of Palestine. and they're rewarding this character and legitimizing him following the slaughter, now finally confirmed by mainstream media groups like Reuters,
Yep.
of thousands of Alawites, families in their homes simply for being Alawites, an attempted ethnic cleansing by a Sunni supremacist Al-Qaeda inspired government of a religious minority, just filming the slaughter, filming the massacres, proudly torturing Alawite men. And this came out in Reuters, not just to document the massacres, but to demonstrate the direct tie to Al-Sharaa's government, that it wasn't just the Muhajirin, the foreign fighters from Xinjiang, the Uyghurs and the Uzbeks and so on, the fanatics who stormed in with him from Idlib, who carried out these massacres, although they were the frontline kind of murder force, death squad. It was under Al-Sharaa's orders and with the knowledge of his government that this was taking place, because they feared the loss of the coast around Latakia. And so he's, being rewarded. I mean, that just doesn't even register. A lot of MAGA supporters actually were upset about that. They didn't say the word Alawite, though. They just said Christians are being murdered in Syria. For some reason, they thought it was a massacre of Christians. And a Christian church in Damascus was bombed, I believe, 2 weeks ago. I mean, this will eventually come for the Christians, but it was Alawites being targeted.
There was a suicide bombing, and the government was notably quiet on the bombing. They didn't send any major minister, like Jelani didn't go visit the bombing, which you'd think he would do, especially because it's in Damascus, for obvious reasons, because the victims were Christian. And it speaks to just how effective our propaganda system is. That's not just the mainstream media went along with this dirty war and still continues to avoid serious scrutiny of it, but so much of the left media as well. And we spent a lot of time criticizing people. We don't have, we know who the players are, but it speaks to how duped people were, that even alternative media got enlisted in this regime change project, which ultimately served the forces of U.S. and Israeli hegemony, which everybody on the left now claims to oppose. But yet on this major battlefront, this proxy war in Syria, which drew in Hezbollah, drew in Iran deliberately. I think that was the major goal from the U.S. and Israeli point of view, to bleed Syria's allies to help make them weaker in the face of Israel. So many people got enlisted in cheering on the same forces that are now being embraced by the sponsors of Israeli genocide.
Definitely. And one reason that Lamy is meeting with Al-Sharaa and why the Trump administration is delisting Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, basically his party, is because they want Syria to become part of the Abraham Accords and to normalize with Israel. And there's a lot of momentum on that front. This was what the dirty war was about, was neutering Syria as a frontline resistance state, as an independent country, basically ending it as a state. This guy, Jonathan Bass, who's a Trump administration liaison, who runs an LNG company in Louisiana, is making a lot of trips to Damascus, hyping up Al-Sharaa, and he's a registered lobbyist for the Abraham Accords, in addition to being like kind of a representative of U.S. corporations that want to plunder Syria and its oil sector. And what Al-Sharaa has demanded, Aaron, you asked earlier about Israel seeking territory in Lebanon. Well, this is interesting. Al-Sharaa said, you can't have the Golan Heights unless we can have Tripoli in Lebanon, as though Lebanon's government would agree to that. And there's enormous pressure on Lebanon to also normalize with Israel, as though Hezbollah is no longer a factor there. But Jolani his name is Jolani. It means he's from the Golan Heights. He was born in the Golan Heights on the Syrian side. He's willing to give up the Golan in exchange for Lebanese territory and then normalize with Israel. And it makes you wonder about his origins as well at Camp Bucca and whether he was turned back then as a kind of Western intelligence asset. But that's what this is ultimately about. And that's terrorism, folks. Terrorism means absolutely nothing. It's just a label that gets slapped on anyone that the regimes we live under are against.